Welcome to Canada's Court, and we've once again been treated to the Shai and RJ show. Canada beats Australia 93 to 83. That makes Canada 2-0 in the so-called group of death. Coach O is back once again, and now, I'm going to risk sounding a little cocky here, but calling this the group of death, it kind of reminds me of that meme where the guy goes, "Call an ambulance, but not for me." That's Canada right now in the group of death. Coach O, how you doing? How you feeling about that game?
I feel really good. We were talking about it before. Waking up early is always great when it's for a win.
Yeah, it's a lot easier. You got your coffee, you're watching the game. If it's a victory, otherwise, if it's a loss, you kind of feel like, well, what did I wake up for? But Canada basketball always worth waking up for. Coach O, I mentioned it off the top, but RJ Barrett seems like he's been one of the best players in the Olympics so far. We've talked lots about RJ in the past and past podcasts, but for someone who's just tuning in, what are you seeing from RJ right now that you're liking?
RJ's asserting himself. I think he's deliberate with the shots that he's taken. I'm a big balance guy, so just the balance of threes and the balance of getting to the paint to draw fouls, I think, is what's really opening things up. And for Canada, you got to be happy because RJ, for the most part, in most of the games, RJ is the player that gets you to the line as much as the most.
Mm-hmm.
And whenever a team goes on a run, we know that it's always a good thing to be able to go to the line to kind of like try to gain momentum back or stop another team from getting momentum. So RJ today had 24 points, finished
Yep.
the game with 24 points, 7 rebounds, 5 assists, right?
Yep.
8 of 14 field goal, got to the line 6 times, made 5 free throws. And again, talking about the efficiency from three, right? 50% from three, 3 of 6. So it's a good sign if you're rooting for Team Canada.
Yeah, and so important, watching that game. A little bit of nerves maybe for Canadian fans. 2 minutes into the game, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander picking up 2 fouls. So important to be able to have a player like RJ when your NBA MVP candidate is sitting on the bench for the entire first quarter.
Absolutely. And I think we were able to answer a lot of questions and we were able to be tested if we're on the Canadian side. You, for the first time in the tournament, have your go to player pick up the 2 fouls early.
Mm-hmm.
I was very interested to see, one, the response of the players, but two, we talked about the depth of our roster. I was very interested to see who was going to step up to the plate. I found it very interesting that a lot of players stepped up in different ways. And I think that this is the makeup of this roster, right? Um, we had the offense had to run in certain different kind of
Yep.
situations, right? You don't have the luxury of having the Shea ISO.
Yeah.
So I like that we were able to attack Australia in many different ways. We saw Trey Lyles posting up. We saw RJ taking a lot of primary, right, decision
Mm-hmm.
maker duties. I'm thinking off the top, Dillon Brooks also posting up.
Yep.
So it's an encouraging sign when you know that when your best player goes to the bench, you have other guys that could step up within the system that we have in place.
And we've talked about depth lots so far. But you're really seeing it in this game, both with, like you said, the first quarter, but also in how Canada is able to play. I noticed, we didn't see a ton of Kelly Olynyk this game. You probably have the minutes closer. I can actually take a little quick peek. Kelly Olynyk didn't only play 4 minutes this game, but Ken Birch played 8 minutes and played very well in those 8 minutes. I mean, he was 3 of 6. He got 6 points for Canada in some important time. There was a +5. To be able to kind of have that option of, he didn't see that much time the game before, but this game we kind of need him for this situation, and we were able to play him, and that was really, I think, is going to be key for Canada as this tournament goes on, just to kind of switch up how they play. Obviously, RJ was one of the big headlines. We also got to talk about Lou Dort. He had people in the, as they call it, the torture chamber. Only play one play I remember is the in the fourth quarter when he just stripped the ball from his former teammate Josh Giddey and got an easy transition dunk. How big? I mean, we've talked about it a lot, the defense for Brooks and Dort, but in a game like this where you do have kind of Australia's got such a spread out kind of scoring, right? Like they don't have one superstar, but they have lots of guys who are solid, who have NBA experience, who can get a bucket. How big is it to have a guy like that who you're just going to rip the ball from a guy and get you an easy two?
I call him Glue Dort, Phil,
Ooh, glue
because
Dort. That's good. That's
he
good.
he just has a way of just impacting the game in so many different ways. Talking about, especially in the FIBA game, a lot of the sets are player led, right? So like he's doing a good job at identifying who does he have to pick up full court, who's going to be the primary initiator of the other team's offense. Because it's not just about picking up the other team's point guard. Certain teams run their offense from certain different pressure points.
Mm-hmm.
So you're looking at Lou being able to, in this game, just pick up the primary point guard and just be able to just make Australia uncomfortable in how they're setting up their offense. So, and the key that I'm going to have to say for Lou right now is that not only you're playing good defense, but you're also providing solid contributions on the offensive end.
Totally.
2 for 5 from 3-point range and 4 for 7 overall from the field. And in my opinion, the biggest thing from this game compared to last game was the fact that Lou wasn't in foul trouble. Lou finished the game with 2 fouls.
Yep.
So he's able to approach the game with the mindset, because we want Lou Dort to be at his best, right?
Yep.
So Lou being able to play freely, be as physical as he can, I think, especially when the fouls are not against them toward the end of a game, I think that's where you can see the biggest impact that Lou can have.
You're absolutely right. And when I think about that play I mentioned where he just strips it from Josh Giddey, if you've got 4 fouls, you can't quite be that aggressive. But if you've got 2, you can maybe gamble a little bit and it can still be a risk. But he's a good enough defender that he was able to make that work. Really, the starting 5 has been so strong. We're talking about Dwight Powell, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Lou Dort, Dillon Brooks, and I'm blanking. RJ Barrett, of course, RJ Barrett. How good has the starting 5 been for Canada so far?
You were able to see it in the third quarter where they really shifted the whole tide of the game. And that started off with Shai maybe not getting the rotation minutes, the same starter minutes that he would get. You felt that the game was close because Canada was trying different things to be able to stay in the game. But it's undeniable, just that 5, as of right now, if you're talking about in terms of the longevity of the game, you're talking about number of possession.
Mm-hmm.
If you're on the Canada locker room, right, on the coaching staff, you're probably thinking that this is the 5 that is probably going to play the bulk of the possessions based on what you've seen.
And what's really kind of exciting is I think that those 5 guys make up a really strong team composition, right? Like in the past, maybe you haven't had players that have gelled this well together. When you talk about, you've got your scorers, you've got your defenders, you've got your glue, Lou. It's just a team that works so well together. And I think, outside of the U.S., where it's just a star-studded roster and it's superstars everywhere. But I do think there's something to the fact that this looks more like a traditional basketball team in the sense that it's not just 5 superstars playing on a basketball court together, which can be incredible as we know. But it's, you've got Shai, who's a great number 1 option. RJ Barrett, he doesn't need to be a number 1 option. He's used to being maybe the second or third option, but he's capable of stepping up in those moments. You've got your guys like Lou Dort and Dillon Brooks and Dwight Powell who can make plays when they need to, when those advantages are created for them. So I think it's just really it's a team that's got a lot of potential, and obviously there's the big bad wolf, which is the USA. and we're getting a little bit ahead of ourselves here, but it, you can see the bit of hope here, right? Like you can see a reason to be optimistic. Obviously, if they end up playing the U.S. at any point, it's going to be tough, but they have the pieces that they need, I think.
You hit the nail right on the head. I think Canada's advantage right now is that as of today, after 2 games, their best five complements each other really well. You're looking at Dwight Powell, who doesn't need the ball as much. His only focus is to set really good screens, especially when Shai has the ball, to give him an advantage. We
Mm-hmm.
know Shai can create off of isolation, but to give the offense a different look, when he sets those screens and him being able to create even more of a different look and also creating even more of an advantage for Shai, that allows other things to open up. We're looking at Dillon Brooks, who also has shown that end of shot clock, he can create
Mm-hmm.
to a certain extent. Lou doesn't need the ball because Lou's impact and Lou's identity, and identity is big in basketball. Lou is not trying to Lou is not trying to find his identity on the offensive end.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost like Lou, what he gives you offensively is almost like a bonus to him.
Yep.
Lou's focus is like it's almost like his focus is on defense, and anything he gives you offensively is almost like a boost. So
Yep.
he's not overthinking it. So he's not overthinking decisions on the offensive end. He's really just, if he gets a closeout, if they overplay him, he's ripping, he's attacking the basket, sometimes drawing fouls, going to the basket. We saw him score and one in this game, or catch and shoot threes, and he's looking very confident into those
Mm-hmm.
threes. And RJ provides a good balance to the attack because when RJ catches the ball on the perimeter, RJ has the foot speed to beat his first defender and has the agility to skip over and make a secondary move, right?
Yep.
And also he draws fouls. So you're looking at a team that has a lot of complements to each other. And then on the defensive end, you're not giving up that much because you're looking at Lou being a really good, really solid defender,
Yep.
even though he's considered to be undersized.
Yep.
You're looking at Shai, who I feel like Shai has been very engaged defensively in a lot of the stretches in this game. Not only is he scoring, but he's providing you with some kind of sustainable, high energy defensive minutes. That really dictates how the others are going to approach the game. Because when you see your best player being able to do that, other players are looking at that and they're like, yo, if my best player is engaged defensively, I have no excuse to not be, right?
Yep.
And then again, defensively, we know what RJ has been very solid. We know Dillon can be a pest. So and afterwards it's just about executing on the offensive end, right? So everything is kind of coming together, and we know that connectivity and complementary pieces are able to fit in a way that is very productive for the Canadian side.
And we talked about it yesterday when we were talking about the women's game. The women had a tough loss, as we know. And you kind of talked about how important it was for them to kind of stick together through this and really be a unit. And so far from the men's side, you've definitely seen them being a unit. They seem like a team that's both on the court and on the sidelines, really gelling well together and looking like a team that, because when you come to the Olympics and you come to a tournament like this, it's important to have that togetherness, right? Like if you're going to win, you really and you don't have, 7 MVPs on your team, you need that togetherness. And that's something I think they're really showing. It really looks like a unit out there. One player we're definitely on watch of is Jamal Murray. Not as strong of a game from him, at least offensively. I know you talked about him kind of coming around for Canada and down the stretch of this tournament, expecting him to have a bit more of a role, but we've only got so many more games for that to happen. How are you feeling about where Jamal Murray is at so far?
I'm of the clan of I'm not really worried because I think the decision making and how we're playing Jamal Murray is what we need to be focused on. Obviously, Jamal didn't have the game that we were, expecting. If we're looking at just points wise, let me just read this out real quick. 2 for 7 field goals, right?
Yep.
1 for 5.
And that three was a big three. That was a big three in the first quarter.
But still, in the first quarter,
1 of 5, not what you're hoping for.
Yeah, 5 points total in 24 minutes. What we have to be able to really understand is Jamal Murray's role on this team is going to be to close games. And we were able to see that when Australia tried to pressure us, the fact that we were able to have Jamal and Shai out there, the pressure didn't really affect us, right? Jamal is going to be more of a closer, right? So what I'm really interested in is looking at the impact in the fourth quarter because that's how they're going to play him, right? You could already see, just based off the substitution pattern, when Shai picked up the foul early, they didn't rush to throw Jamal in there, to throw him out of rhythm. Yeah, Andrew Nembhard was the one that came in for Shai. So you could already tell that just the coaching staff has this belief that they know what Jamal can bring to the team because at the end of the day, they didn't rush him to put him in the game. But who closed the game? Jamal Murray. And if you're looking at it in the fourth quarter, Jamal Murray had 2 points and he had 3 assists. That's the way that I would probably look at it. It's the impact of a player like that, especially from what we've seen in Denver with him closing out games, being alongside Nikola Jokic, is really going to manifest himself in how Canada closes games. Because I think that psychologically, when you have Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and you have Jamal Murray, if you're on the Canadian side, you feel really comfortable with having those two elite guards that one can create shots for each other, can create for others, but also have a really good understanding of what the moment is.
Yeah. And I think it's telling as well that, we've got 2 big wins here, right? Greece and Australia are 2 very tough teams. We knew that going in, and they showed it in those games. It wasn't like these were cakewalks. These took real competition. But in those 2 wins, we didn't need Jamal Murray to score double-digit points. So if we get to a game where he finds his rhythm and he starts to get going offensively just from a shooting perspective, that's going to really, change the scoreboard here. If he in this game is 4 of 7 instead of 2 of 7, that's a big impact. And so I think you're right in saying that we've got what we need from him so far. If we get more, that's going to be good. That's going to be great. But yeah, we can be happy with what we've seen so far. What going forward? Go ahead.
Sorry to cut you off.
No.
I guarantee, right? And we'll be able to look back at this because we're going to put this out today, and we're going to be able to look at. I guarantee that if Canada is down 12, one of the first player that the coaching staff is going to look at is going to be Jamal Murray. I'm ready to bet my bucket hat.
Betting the bucket hat. All right, here we go.
No, I'm ready because it's just mentally, that he really activates when the team really needs him.
Absolutely.
Right? So I'm actually very encouraged that he hasn't felt like he needed to force. I haven't felt any frustration from him missing shots. I haven't felt really him trying to get a bit antsy on possessions, right? Mm-hmm. I felt like for the most part, Jamal, one, is so confident in himself that it's going to translate when we need it the most. So if you're on the Canadian side, stay tuned. Jamal Murray is going to activate real soon. He activates in those big moments for sure.
Yeah, we've seen that. We've seen that in, the NBA playoffs. And even playing for Team Canada. I remember Pan Am games in Toronto where he was, that was exactly who he was. He was clutch. Let's talk about going forward. We talked about a lot of positives here. Where do you think Canada has room to improve as we look ahead to the rest of the schedule?
Okay, so I'm going to look, I'm not going to look too far. I'm going to look at our next matchup right now. We're going against Spain.
You're a true coach. You're a true coach here. You're not looking further. You're just looking at the next game. I like it.
You have to. I've been in those situations. Trust me. I've been in.
I don't have to. I just talk about it.
Oh my goodness. I've been in those situations where you overlook your opponent, things are going well, but a lot of times in basketball, it's about kind of being even keel and just understanding that as sweet as the moment could be right now, it could you could wake up tomorrow and it could be bitter.
Yeah.
Be very bitter. The 3 points of emphasis that I'm going to put for looking forward is I do think that there's a level of adjusting to the FIBA officiating that we have to be able to understand to have success. In FIBA, the referees, and this is just from my experience, having played, in Canada, the referees don't really allow you to hold and use your arms. For the most part, you're looking at how Dillon and Lou are guarding players. The arms are out, right? So visually for the official, that kind of like alleviates the fact that they may call a foul for reach grab. Those are mostly the ones that they don't really anytime your arms go out, they're gonna start they're gonna call those. And we could think about the possession with Shai at the beginning, right? Just even a little bit of contact, especially on the rebound, they're gonna call those. It's about a lot of times it's about getting your body into the position before the offensive player, right? So you have to anticipate movements, right? A lot of that you do that through the course of the game, understanding what teams want to run, understanding personality, but a lot of the time through film as well. Like the more film that you watch, the more you kind of know what certain teams want to be able to run. And then on a situation where we're going to play Spain, maybe now we're able to bump them off their course a little bit earlier and not allow them to kind of get into a situation that puts us in a place where we may have to do fouls, right? Mm-hmm. Because a lot of the fouls that get called is a lot of time when you're reacting to the offense. So I think definitely adjusting to the FIBA officiating, understanding that. Tied into understanding the FIBA officiating of the fouls, right? We struggled to guard bigs, right? So you're looking at, obviously, Giannis was a presence, had 34 points in the first game. But even in this game, we had Jock Landale, who had 16 points and 12 rebounds, right? Whether that's offensive rebound, whether that's catching the ball in the low post and just backing his way down and scoring, right?
Yep.
We have understanding, and this is why I'm saying both are tied together. With the FIBA officiating, you can get away with a bit more pushing and shoving with post play, not with the perimeter play. Mm-hmm. And I think understanding those two differences can make a big difference. Because when Jock Landale is backing you down and you have, say, a smaller guard on him, you're able to maybe push him and bump him a little bit more. Mm-hmm. The referees are less likely to call that. Because what they judge is an advantage for the big inside, right? The big has an advantage. So in their mind, they're not going to over-ref it. The referees in the FIBA game, especially in the FIBA game, don't want to be a part of the game as much as possible. They don't want to decide the game.
Yeah.
Right? So just understanding that situation, that's going to be something big because we're heading into a matchup with Spain where Spain is going to play two bigs.
Yep.
Spain is going to play two bigs, right? So looking ahead, that's definitely something that we have to be able to take into consideration because defensively, we're going to have to get stops because expect Spain to throw it inside in the post and let the bigs work and cut off of that, right? So that's definitely one thing. And the last one that I have is this is mostly for one player that I think right now we haven't seen the Nickeil Alexander-Walker that we would have definitely expected, mm-hmm. right? But very confident that he's someone that can definitely get back on track, especially in the matchup with Spain where maybe there's not as many guards that can blow past you as fast as possible. Because we mentioned in one of our previous podcasts that what Nickeil is really good at doing is anticipating positioning, using his length and disrupting in the half court. I feel that right now for the first two matchups, his matchups have been primary guards that start from the back court and just kind of speed and bump into him as much as possible. So as a positional, I'm going to say defender, he has been put in a lot of uncomfortable situations. But then what that does for a defensive player is that translates to the offensive end, because you can sense that offensively he's trying to figure it out offensively. But he should be more of a Lou, where defensively things need to click for him to make or have the biggest impact offensively, right?
And
So I think that's definitely something that I'm looking forward to, because if you're Canada, you're 2-0, and we still haven't had the kind of game that we expected from Nikhil.
mm-hmm.
So you have to be hopeful that it's going to happen very soon.
And kind of piggybacking off that, I noticed one of the things I did notice about Canada's offense, which maybe is a room for improvement, is kind of some of the early shots you've seen from players like Andrew Nembhard or Nikhil Alexander-Walker. I think there's got to be a bit of an understanding from those players that, not that you shouldn't shoot. Obviously, that's not what I'm saying. If you're open, you take it. But you don't need to be taking like deep threes, 14 seconds left on the shot clock, when you have guys like Barrett and Shai and that on the floor, right? Like, it's one thing if Shai takes a deep shot early in the shot clock, you live with that, and he's such a star player, you might even want that. But when it comes to players who are more of those role players, it's still important for them to continue to learn that role as we go forward. But you make another good point, is that we haven't seen Canada's best yet. I don't think we've seen Canada really good. We've seen them play awesome, but we haven't seen them play, their best 40 minutes of basketball. I don't think so far this tournament. But like you said, we can't take Spain lightly.
Yeah, no, we can't. And going back to what you said about the offense, I think that's a really good point, because it's the quality of threes, and the quality of threes, and this is good for coaches to understand and bring back in their toolbox for when the season starts. The quality of threes is determined by three factors: who takes the threes in the FIBA game, how early and shot clock wise, and lastly, how guarded are you? You can put yourself in situations. You can put yourself in situations defensively if you take a lot of the bad threes, right? A bad threes can be a combination of any of those, right? So you're looking at, like you're saying, you're talking about an early shot clock three, contested, and especially if it's above the break, right? And above the break three is a longer rebound, right? Yep. So going back to what you said, if we have the ability to take contested long threes above the break, right? Or take early in the shot clock corner threes, that's a big difference.
That's a good point.
Right? So it's, again, I completely agree with you. We have to be able to be a bit more conscious with our shots, especially with the players that are coming in and providing those solid minutes off the bench. By all means, if you get on the court and you feel confident, if you're confident, you had an open, wide, get to the paint, kick out three, shoot it. By all means. But I think what we saw was a lot of early threes where I feel like we kind of let the defense we kind of settled, and we didn't really put any pressure on the defense.
I can hear my high school coach telling me we can get those 3-pointers anytime, right? Like anytime you can get those.
Anytime.
And then he would tell me, and Philip, you can get those 3-pointers no time. Please don't shoot that ever again. Go into the paint, don't shoot threes. Anyway, thankfully I'm not playing for Team Canada. That's really good for them. Now going forward here, we talked about Spain. Let's take a little bit of a look at the standings. Now, Canada obviously 2-0.
Let's do it.
Having beaten Australia and having beaten Greece. Now, because Australia beat Spain, this is getting a little complicated. It's getting a little tricky. So Australia is 1-1. Spain beat Greece today, so they're 1-1. Greece is 0-2. Greece is not a threat to Canada here. But the thing is, what makes it complicated is if Canada doesn't take care of business against Spain, we've got a bit of a weird three-way tie here, right? If they beat Spain, it's done. We're in the next round, no matter what. But with the way things are, if they beat Spain and Australia beats Greece, it's 2-1, 2-1, 2-1, which is very interesting because obviously Canada will hold the tiebreaker against Australia, but Australia will hold the tiebreaker against Spain. So where that ends up, we looked at the rule book. We're not 1,000% sure, but we're feeling pretty good about Canada's chances. It's also worth noting Canada is currently a plus 17 in the tournament. I think that's really important to note because point differential does come into play. They're a plus 17. Australia is a plus 2. Spain is a minus 5. So it would take, I believe, if I'm doing my math correct, which I'm probably not, but it would take Spain having a pretty big game to even beating Canada by like 20 points for it to, I think, for Canada to drop out of even, the playoff mix here. So I'm feeling pretty confident about Canada making it to the next round. And, let's just assume for a second that that's what happens. How exciting is that? Canada back into the Olympics. Been 24 years since we were last year, and to be able to move on potentially and play, getting ready for a potential medal game, getting ready to play towards a medal. How does that feel for you as just like a fan, as someone who enjoys Canadian basketball and watches so much of it?
I feel it would definitely be something exciting. But I know how it is in the Canadian locker room right now. We want to reel it back
Yeah.
because we know how Spain gave us Spain. That was a battle that we had with Spain at the World Cup last year.
Yep.
Right. So I know looking forward to it. Maybe we got to focus on a couple of things that we need to look ahead for the Spain game for us to be able to get that feeling where, okay, we're through to the next round.
Coach,
We're
fans here. We're fans here. You're not in the. We're not in the Canadian locker room. They got to do that. I completely agree. Shai, he's got to be thinking about Spain. Philip Drost, he doesn't have to. My mentality isn't going to affect them. I'm feeling pretty good. I will just give the last scores from today's games. Japan, currently as we're recording this, is playing France. That's 47-42. So very France in the lead. So very close game.
Mm-hmm.
And then Germany playing Brazil. And I believe Germany and Brazil are both won their first game. So let me just double quickly check. But if they both won, they're both won their game. This is a pretty big game for them. And no, actually, sorry, I forgot. Brazil lost their first game. So big game here for France, who's looking like a real threat in this tournament. Later in the day, we've also got Brazil versus Germany. I'm getting all mixed up here. And then tomorrow, let's look at the games tomorrow because we're not going to podcast tomorrow. No games, no Canadian games, no Canadian games to podcast tomorrow. So people get a break from us tomorrow. But we have Puerto Rico against Serbia and the USA versus South Sudan tomorrow. So some big games there too. I mean, that's Group C has been an interesting one. It'll be interesting to see who comes out there.
No, for sure. It's an exciting tournament, and I think for me personally, the best part is seeing the different kind of style of play. Right? You feel like the world is catching up. Like I keep saying that the world is really catching up, and it's really fun to see. I think I'm looking forward to the next game. That will probably be the Canada versus Spain matchup.
Yep.
Keys in that game will definitely be you got to handle the ball pressure because Spain has played a bit of zone. They just beat Greece, right? You had the score, right? What was the score for that game?
Let me give me 2 seconds here. 84-77.
84-77. Yeah. So I rewatched, especially in the first quarter. Like I had mentioned, Spain is going to play two bigs. So how we can guard the interior, that's going to be one of the keys. So the rotations, they got to be quick. You got to be on point. You got to be in position early. The floor is not going to be as spaced as it was versus an Australia. So that kind of plays into your advantage a little bit, right? Because Australia is kind of going to spread the floor out all the way with having the spacing at the two wings and the two corners. With Spain, what they do is they go a bit more into a 3-out, 2-in, which can be a bit more advantageous because you don't have to cover as much ground, right? You can kind of use your length to a certain extent to be able to be in positions early. And definitely definitely just being able to understand that what Canada's advantage in this game is definitely how they're able to attack off the perimeter, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because with two bigs, you have situations where you have to make the bigs defend, right? So we're looking at our best lineup. We have four really mobile players, so that can put Spain into a pickle. But also something that I noticed, the key for me in today's game was definitely I was paying attention to the minutes where they played Dwight and Kelly together. I was kind of intrigued to see how we played the two bigs.
I was just going to ask you about that. Do you think we're going to see Canada play more
Yeah,
two big lineups against Spain?
I think it was very encouraging today to see that when Kelly and Dwight Powell started together at the beginning of the second quarter, it was 28-26 Australia. When Kelly got subbed out and they brought back Dillon Brooks into the game, it was 37-35 Australia, right? So it wasn't like you were in the negative. It was at a zero.
Yeah.
So I think even that is something that's very encouraging. But yeah, we're looking forward to it. It'll be like a very interesting matchup, and I'm sure all of Canada is hoping that we can seal the deal and win the group outright.
Sorry, we're on a bit of a roll here. We said we were only going to talk for a little bit. We're on a bit of a roll here, so I'm just gonna one last question because we didn't have a chance to talk about it because we podcasted about the men's side on Saturday and the U.S. men's team played on Sunday. What did you make of the U.S. team in that first game? They dominated Serbia. Tough game, with Jokic. Jokic tried his best, and he was strong when he was out there, but USA just looking pretty good.
As of right now, if you want to win a gold medal, you got to go through the United States.
Yep.
That's just the bottom line. The U.S. right now, even having played one game, I think the wow factor was just we hadn't seen Kevin Durant for the whole exhibition tournament, and you're just looking at scoring 21 points, going 8 of 8 in the first half.
That's wild.
Yeah, that put the whole world on notice.
That was scary. I think I even texted you that I was a little bit scared after after watching that one. But
if we're
we're just looking ahead. We're just looking ahead to Spain, as you said. That's all we can look for right now. Coach O, lovely to chat with you, and hopefully next game is on Friday. Am I right? I believe so, or is it Saturday? Oh, geez, I should have known this before coming in. Give me 2 seconds here. Next game,
I think the women's play on Thursday.
Women's play on Thursday, and the guys play on Friday. So we'll be back podcasting Thursday, talking about Canada versus Australia on the women's side, and then Friday, of course, Canada versus Spain. That's at 10:15 a.m. on the men's side. Going to be a lot of fun. Coach O, thanks again for coming on.